Good morning. Good morning. It's 9 a.m. and it is the Georgia Show. I'm Jake Rowe. He's Rusty Mansell. We're DawgsHQ, and we got a lot to talk about. Got not here for a long time, but we're here for a good time this morning. And drinking a little coffee. I'm sure Rusty's got his.
I'm out, man.
You're
Look,
out. What you got? You medium roast guy? You dark roast guy? What do you do?
I'm medium.
Yeah.
But I don't know. You're getting old. You switch to black coffee.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like warm ashtray. You know what I mean? It's not all. It's just what you drink now. You know what I mean? I know I'm getting old.
I listen. I love it. Every now and then I throw a little coconut almond milk in there, just to kind of give it a little honey or something, just to give myself a treat. Yeah. But otherwise, I like it. I look forward to it. Really, like first thing I think about when I wake up in the morning is let me get my coffee in me. It's not even that it wakes me up, but we're here, man. And listen, yesterday, Rusty, Kirby Smart won his first big recruiting battle of 2024. Georgia got a big time commit, and Travaris Robinson. That situation was one that I think we're just all really glad to kind of have in the rear view. Us, Alabama, everybody.
If I could have two favors for Kirby Smart ever, and I'm talking about walk in there and lay it on the table and say, this is what happened. I would love to know how it went down with the Kobe Dean the last 24 hours and how they got him to Georgia. And I would love to know what went down with T-Rob since Friday morning, basically, because that thing guaranteed was wild behind the scenes. And it was we were having to piece stuff together all day yesterday. And, we kind of got the word late Sunday night. The last text I think you and I had, I was like, I think this guy's going to stick with Georgia. And I'm not going to put anything up until first thing in the morning. I'm going to double check one more time. But, yesterday morning, when we kind of broke the news that this guy's leaning towards sticking with Georgia, and he did.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where, folks tend to get in their feelings about it a little bit about one way or the other, but you got a guy that's about to uproot his life, and take on his fifth SEC job. And that's not an easy decision, especially when you've got an opportunity to coach a lot of the guys that you've helped recruit. And, like if you're Travaris Robinson, listen, you and I can't sit here and tell you what Alabama was actually offering him. Defensive coordinator, yes. Yeah. I don't know the ins and the outs and the details. Was he going to have the whole thing? Was he going to get to hire his own defensive staff? Like, I don't know. I can't say that, but what we do know is it was a significant position. It was defensive coordinator. But that's a talented defense, and you don't get the keys to run a defense like that very often in your career. And he was going to get that, and maybe he was going to get that opportunity. Still, he chooses to come to Georgia, work at his fifth different SEC school. And, man, that's such a big win for Georgia. And now he'll have a chance to work with Will Muschamp for the 11th year of his career.
Yeah, those two are close, obviously. I was told his wife and Will's wife are close. And, Will's going off the field in an analyst role, which he certainly has earned. And, be able to – at times he can watch his kid play at Vanderbilt, and if his kid wherever start a game, then he can be on a plane. For everything that Kirby demands, from everything I've heard, and I've heard this from a lot of assistant coaches, unless it's something absolutely crazy, you're expected to be at your kid's game. Like if your kid's starting for the first time, then you're supposed to be there, and so that part of it, I think Kirby Smart, as his kids play and Andrew gets older, that's going to be the question. Where's Kirby Smart going to be on Friday nights watching that kid play? So, but do not get off the subject, but what a huge deal for Georgia to land him. He's an elite recruiter, and he's the guy that beat Georgia for Jake Pope. He beat Georgia for Caleb Downs. He beat Georgia for Terry and Arnold. If you remember, he got Terry and Arnold. So, when those guys got down to Georgia and Bama, he's been one of those guys that's kind of been winning those battles. So that's a big deal for Georgia to get him and to get him on their staff.
No doubt about it. And Rusty, I mean, we ain't got time to list all the guys that he's beat Georgia for over the years. I mean, it's
he got
a long list.
The one thing I like is J.C. Horn. Georgia never was really in that, never really got on him quite. Mel Tucker kind of at the end, that last kind of month Mel Tucker was at Georgia, but T-Rob was on J.C. Horn at South Carolina the whole time. I think he wound up being a top 10 pick. He's a first rounder in NFL. So, that tells you the eval, not just a 5-star guy. He went and got a guy that's kind of quote unquote kind of under the radar, and he was a first rounder when he got done with it.
And I tell you what, man, the more I keep coming back to it, there was this whole debate about, how good of a defensive coordinator is he? Listen, I don't know that we know. He did it at South Carolina. I know one thing. He was calling plays. He was on the other sideline, him and Will, putting together a game plan to completely stifle Georgia in that 2019 game in Athens. I do know that. Mm-hmm. One of the worst. They made that one of the ugliest football games I've ever watched. Now, some of that was, a pass going through a receiver's hands and, this and that, a missed field goal. I mean, Georgia lost that ball game, last home loss. 2 of those guys are in Athens now. But I look at the development. Like, you talk about Terry and Arnold, right?
Yep.
Listen, I think Terry and Arnold went from a guy that most people recruited and saw as a safety in high school to an elite cornerback. Yeah, I mean,
first rounder.
Yeah, I mean, I firmly believe that if he's not a first rounder, he's going to be one of these guys that somebody gets in the top 50, and we're saying, and he's going to have. He's just a great football player, and I feel like T-Rob did a really good job getting him ready to play this past year. The way they got Caleb Downs ready, who, listen, he's a big time talent. Don't get me wrong, Caleb Downs is an amazing talent, but played safety, played star. They moved in positions and got him ready to play. T-Rob is not just a great recruiter. He's a great position coach. We can talk about coordinator when he gets the chance to call plays one day. Mm-hmm. But as of right now, I'm looking at him as a developer and a recruiter. And, he's up there with guys that are really revered in this sport to me, because I've done it on both sides. Guys like Sam Pittman, who for the longest time was considered an elite recruiter and elite developer. And you can go on and on and on with guys like that. Glenn Schumann is in that category. Brian Hartline, you mentioned that last time, is in that category. There just aren't very many of those, and Georgia's got him one here.
Yeah, and you look at the co-DC title. When Dan Lanning was here, Dan Lanning was the defense coordinator, and Glenn Schumann was the co-defense coordinator. Well, Dan Lanning was making the calls. So when Dan Lanning left, Glenn Schumann stepped into that role. Well, now T-Rob is the co-DC. So you look at that, and if one day Glenn Schumann, who's not always going to be at Georgia, Kirby Smart seems to always have that next guy ready. So that would, but that's kind of how he's worked this thing in the past, is with this co-DC. And people ask, how does that work? Well, this is not the first time. This is not unusual for Kirby Smart, how he does this thing, and that allows you to pay more money. When you get a title like that, that's kind of how the framework works for those types of things. So his contract to come out in a couple of days, I would imagine, maybe a week or so. I don't know how that works, Jake. You guys handle that kind of stuff. But
the open records request is in, buddy, for him and Will. We're gonna find out. We're gonna find out how much they're gonna bump on Will Muschamp, Larry Muschamp, as Matt Godwin talks about. Listen, there was something that came up yesterday on the Bill Shank show, and I think this needs to be that I was talking to Bill about that I don't think we've talked about enough. Will Muschamp's phenomenal football mind. I've had people tell me before and after Will Muschamp joined the staff, he said it would kind of make your jaw drop to understand how revered he is in that building by Kirby Smart, by other people, just so respected. But I've also heard enough at this point to understand how much it means to keep him around from a glue guy perspective, because if you remember, we had Matt Godwin on Bark After Dark and said, hey, you got one coach to have a beer with. Who's the guy? Who are you sitting down having a beer with, having a meal with? And he said, Larry Muschamp. Let me tell you something, man. I've heard enough people talk about this, and you saw the thing that happened with Jackson in the Orange Bowl.
Yeah.
That his personality and he's a glue guy. What he means that to the program too. It's not just he's a guy that they love up there. And he, I firmly believe that he is a big part of that. Couple years ago when Kirby Smart said the most chemistry of any staff I've been around, I believe Will Muschamp was such a giant part of that, based on everything I've heard, and it's massive to keep him around. I know you've known Will for a long time. It might make you uncomfortable to say these nice things about him, but
yeah, we've come to a mutual respect. We don't talk about our high school sports. You know, that
Temple versus Darlington, baby.
Some wars. Now I'll tell you this, and I've said this to Will. I've said this to his kids before Will Muschamp got hurt. And I'm gonna tell you, Northwest Georgia, we were full of NFL athletes for whatever reason at the time. I played with one that played 10 years in NFL. Everybody had athletes, a lot better, a lot deeper up here at that time. But Will was a hell of an athlete. I'm telling you, he was a hell of an athlete, and he had a really, really bad compound leg fracture. I think he was playing left field as a fly ball between him and the shortstop. You know how the left fielder comes in, the shortstop's backpedaling. And I think he and Will collided and it broke his femur. And so Will was done, missed his whole senior year of everything. But he was a hell of an athlete. God, I hope he don't see this because he'll text me over this one. But Will was a hell of an athlete. And I think the one thing, if Will Muschamp ever did about 5 podcasts in a row, this guy is hilarious. I mean, this guy's got a great sense of humor. I think people to see that side of him, and that's kind of what he brings to that office, I'm sure, kind of keeps. Obviously, everybody sees how serious he is and what type of competitor he is, but very, very funny personality on the side. So I think Will's, and quite honestly, he's earned this right to do that, but he's also going to still be an important piece of this Georgia football program. Not completely tapping out on that deal.
And also, I mean, you go back to that Orange Bowl. You had 2 or 3 offensive players around him. You had 2 or 3 defensive players around him. Like there were guys that he didn't interact with, coach, on a daily basis that were right there that wanted to see his reaction to Jackson getting a chance to play, and everybody was fired up about him. You and I talk about this sometimes, like Chaz Chambliss or some of these walk-ons, Dan Jackson, other guys that get a chance to play that maybe don't play a whole lot. When they do something, how the teammates react.
Correct.
Can often tell how they feel about him.
100%.
And for them to crowd around Will like that and do that, and that was one of the coolest moments of the year just in general, because it was freaking hilarious. He stole Carson Beck's first down celebration there, so that was a lot of fun. Let's look at this. So one of the things, and I guess this is a little bit of a theme now, Rusty. For a couple of years, Georgia's rotated offensive linemen, and what do you know? Next year you get there and they've got starters coming back that you didn't really predict that would be coming back because you didn't think they would turn into starters. They're doing it with the coaches now, with the co-DC. They've got like this little stepping stone deal. Well, the way they've handled the recruiting class, the way they've handled this 2024 class is they went ahead and locked it all up, and they're already working harder on 2025 than anything else. Let's talk about these guys that they're seeing, and Elijah Griffin, Zayden Walker, Mason Short, who's committed to Alabama, the Glover kid, who I love. I don't know how Georgia feels about him, but he is one of my favorite interior offensive linemen the past couple of years. Decommitted from Alabama last night. The kid from Langston Hughes. What are you thinking? What's the feeling for Georgia in state in this 2025 class?
Important. I mean, this is a huge class. I don't sit in those meetings, but they have to understand this hadn't happened in a while. It's so deep, and I've said it a couple podcasts now. I'll say it again. The state of Georgia has been down pretty bad depth-wise. It's always got a couple players, but not like now this wide receiver class in 2025, and that's what's been killing Georgia. They've been having to go win battles out of state, man. And then when you get one like Mike Matthews, who was clearly the guy, everybody in the world is just in here. You're battling everybody for someone like that. But the state has depth at wide receiver in the 25 class. I mean, they could literally sign all their wide receivers from mid-state. And I can't tell you the last time that I've said that. The D line is absolutely ridiculously loaded. They got great offensive linemen. They got great tackles. They got centers. They got everything you can check there. And don't want to give away too much, but the 2025 class in Georgia, the state of Georgia, might get a little deeper today. So we'll see how that goes later on today. But when you look at this, when you look at the class, it's so important. And I kind of recognize this about last maybe June or July. I was like, wait a minute, there's another D lineman, and there's another D lineman. There was a kid last night that someone brought to me, Jake. I'd never heard of him. He's 6'5.5", 305 pounds. I'm going to go see him, or I'm going to call Chad Simmons and send Chad Simmons to go see him. Georgia is going to see him later this week, and that's another in-state kid that I wasn't aware of, and he's a 2025. So this class, man, it's so important to me because for a million reasons, it's the key positions. And Jake, as you move forward with NIL and in-state kids, that I think you're going to start seeing a lot of importance, a little bit more. Not saying that Georgia has not put an emphasis on the state of Georgia. They have. The problem is it's never been this deep. So I think the timing of this class, the 25 class, and being deep at key positions, because it's deeper in 25, 24, and 23 by a good shot at O-line, D-line, and wide receiver.
There's no doubt about it, man. And you look at it right now. You have to get all the way to one of the best players I feel like in this class in the state of Georgia, to number 15, before you see a guy outside the top 100 overall players.
Yeah.
For Christian Garrett is number 99 at number 14. You get to number 15, Rusty, is the first in-state player that's outside of the top 100, and it's Juan Gaston, who, Jesus, Lord have mercy, I love that kid.
Go watch basketball highlights. So he was 6'7" and a quarter.
Yeah.
I think 337 Saturday. Yeah. And my man is drop step baselining.
Good for him too, because I know when he was in Under Armour about this time a year ago, I 337 was about like me saying that that I weigh 210. I mean, he was a big man by that time last year. So, but man, this is such a loaded group. I mean, first thing you've got right off the cuff is two 5-star defensive linemen, Elijah Griffin and not 5-star. Well, yeah, 2 5-star defensive linemen, Elijah Griffin and Justice Terry, Zayden Walker, who is, listen,
watch his highlights.
We've got some notes on him today. You do, Rusty, but we haven't been shy about how Georgia feels about him. Elias Williams, he is already a Georgia commit. Georgia is all in there, 6'7", 235-pound tight end. Josh Petty, Jonte Gilbert, Usman Chroma. I mean, it is a loaded class. Jalen Perlotti, another top 10 prospect, is committed to Georgia, and it's loaded, man. And I'm interested to see how Georgia treats the lines of scrimmage in this class, because you're looking at this, and there are a ton of quality offensive linemen. There's not that elite guy just yet. I think Juan Gaston might get there. Yeah. But man, there's just so much talent in this state. And I'm with you. I don't think Georgia needs to change its recruiting philosophy, but listen, you recruit your backyard, you recruit it hard. It's not like Georgia in these past few classes has ignored anybody in their own state. They've recruited the hell out of some guys, and they've lost some battles. But I do think it's important to get your fair share of those in-state guys, because even if it's just a tiny bit, it means a little bit more to them. And a little bit more to kind of be close to home, and at least you're not battling homesickness in addition to everything else. It's one less reason, I guess, for them to jump out and get out there. What do we have coming up as far as recruiting goes? In terms of what we're going to get a chance to see and what's on the horizon for junior days, big events.
Typically under Kirby Smart, they don't do junior days every weekend. That's something he started a couple of years ago. And if you're on our site, you realize that list they had last weekend, and Georgia had, my goodness, a ton of players there, around 2025, I think, big time targets. So I'm not expecting like big junior days. I think the news here is who they go see, because now if you go on DawgsHQ today and you read those notes I just posted the second we came on here, you see who Kirby Smart's seeing in the 25 class. And I don't know if it's been touched on here or not, but there's a new rule to where the 20, and this is for all the stupid stuff the NCAA does, this is the best one they've had in a while. If you're a 2025 prospect, if Jake Rowe is a 2025 prospect at Jefferson High School, Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann can come in and sit down with you for 30 minutes. Now, they can only do that twice during the month of January. But it used to be that bump rule. Like you had to see him in the hall and kind of, hey, and look, man, that was just so stupid. Now you can sit down with a kid and you got 30 minutes. So it's good to be able to sit down and talk to the kid face to face, and you'll see him again when he comes on campus. But I love that rule. So if you want to see who Kirby Smart's seeing today, we posted that on DawgsHQ first thing this morning. I think a couple of those are real interesting, and I think a couple of them make a lot of sense. That's just today. That's just the ones we've confirmed so far. So, that's the new rule, and that's kind of where we are. So to me, I'm not expecting huge junior days again, but I do expect Georgia to be on the road a lot, and I like to see where they are, because that pretty much tells you how they're eligibility up. That pretty much tells you kind of where they're at, who they're seeing. Like they see some guys I've never heard of, and I'm kind of like, oh, okay, well, that's a guy like the one I found out about last night, another in-state, lineman. So, kind of think about that. That's kind of how things pop up.
Yeah, I have used up my eligibility, Tomahawk Dog, and
I think you got a COVID year. I really
everybody's lucky. I have. I'm just telling you that right now. Listen, Josh Newberg was on Bark After Dark last night. And he dropped a, hey, I had a red shirt year at Florida State. It took me 5 to get out of there, and I was like, dude, I had 3 red shirt years.
Oh, yeah. You had a COVID year before COVID year, didn't you?
Yeah, I had a COVID year before and after. I went on paternity leave. I had all sorts of stuff happen to me while I was in college, but I did finish. So, but yeah, everybody's lucky I don't have any eligibility left, because Mike Bobo would be like, that's a fullback right there. That's a fullback. That's a guy that'll pay his own way and come slam his face into people.
Be like number 49 playing fullback. Thad Peavy, I believe, has asked a couple times. So interested take on Terry Bussey. Yeah, I think he's a DB. I think he's DB all the way, and I think that's the last high school kid in 2024 that Georgia's like really recruiting. Dante Jackson has a relationship with him coming from USC. So
and he likes T-Rob a lot too, according to a recent update that we've got.
I do expect him at some point to be on campus for an official visit. It may not be one of those like Friday, Saturday, Sunday deals. It might be like one of those Monday, Tuesday deals. I mean, they can do those now. I do think he projects as a defensive back. I did talk to Charles Power yesterday, our director of scouting at On3, and I said, you like Bussey at wide receiver or DB? And he said, man, he was great at Under Armour at wide receiver, but I do think his ceiling is at DB. So I think everybody's on the same page, and he's definitely getting recruited at DB for Georgia. So we'll see how that plays out. But that's really the last name I would think left in high school for the 2024 class.
Just for kicks and giggles, corner, safety, star. I look at him, I see kind of a compact body star. Somebody in that Javon Bullard mold, but maybe a little bit more explosive.
I have learned that Georgia takes these long kids that can freaking run, and they make them fit. You know what I mean? So I don't want to pin him down and say, hey, he's only a corner. They just take a kid that can run and has length, and they'll make him fit.
Yeah, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I mean, you just can't have enough of those guys. And, man, I'm so excited for this spring, because there are some guys like Chris Peel and Kyron Jones and some guys we just didn't get to see a whole lot of, that you heard a lot about, but you never got to see it. You never got to look at it with your own eyes, outside of that, interception for a touchdown for Kyron Jones early in the year. And we've got an interview coming up with him over at DawgsHQ. We've got an interview coming up with Damon Wilson from after the Orange Bowl. We kind of waited until after the dust settled on everything else. I've got an interview coming with Ra Thomas, a one-on-one there. Now that we know Ra's staying at Georgia, there was no announcement that he's leaving, and yesterday was the deadline, so that's where we're at there. So I'll have a one-on-one with Ra Thomas coming as well. So y'all come on over to DawgsHQ. Check all that out. Check all the recruiting info out. Rusty's putting it out daily. So Jake Roos, Jeremy Johnson killing it. Palmer's got some off-season kind of setting you up for spring stuff coming, and I'm just kind of scratching my ears.
Let me say this, and I'm good for a tease. This is not a commitment. This is not a commitment, and it's not Caleb Downs. So let me stop that before it gets. But there'll be some interesting news today in the world of recruiting, and we'll have you covered on DawgsHQ. So I would imagine before, say, 1 p.m. today, there'll be some interesting news in the world of recruiting. It is not Caleb Downs. My God, don't get that stirred up. It's not a commitment, but I think Georgia fans will be interested in this. So before 1 today, be on DawgsHQ at some point. I think you'll understand.
2025 has a lot of good punters, Tyler Stanfield says. Don't tell Rusty that. You've just
don't tease me.
he ain't going to be worth anything for the rest of the day.
But I'll leave you with this. The biggest fail of 2023 was me knowing about that walk-on long snapper and not getting my money's worth out of that, because I was like, I can't do it to him today. I can't remember what was going on.
Yeah, it would seem like it was obviously it was the middle of that transfer portal stuff.
Something going on. I couldn't do it to y'all because I would have been dead man walking, but damn, I wanted to.
All right, y'all. Hey, come on over to DawgsHQ. Check us out. Content flowing. We love you guys. Y'all take it easy.